At present, China's corruption culture is pervasive, and countless corrupt officials flee away to take their wealth away. The official-based culture has reached the peak in the history of the Chinese nation, and various ugly phenomena, such as prostitution, gambling, drug use, abduction, and trafficking of women and children, kidnapping and extortion, bullying the market, getting rich and exploiting, fraud and deceit, corruption continues. The Mao Zedong era has basically been eradicated. Now the dross is rising, and it is getting worse. The people complained everywhere. They lost the commanding heights of morality and the hearts of the people. Looking at today's chaotic economic picture, crazy demolition, infrastructure playing with reinforced concrete and bloody status quo, we think deeply. We can't avoid the cruel reality of Chinese society, and we can't help but admit that Mao Zedong was right back then. Mao Zedong was at least 50 years ahead of us. What is the law? What is the real rule of law? The first constitution of the People's Republic of China was formulated under the chairmanship of Mao Zedong himself. It took 1.5 years to refer to dozens of constitutions in the world. Historical contribution. Mao Zedong created the most excellent legal system in human history that is most suitable for vulnerable groups. Moreover, this system is concise, clear, efficient, and effective. For example, the People's Mediation System was once praised by the Stockholm Arbitration Court in Sweden as an efficient and advanced judicial decision-making system, and it has been widely used for reference. Another example is the death penalty probation system, which is a regeneration and rescue mechanism invented and advocated by Mao Zedong himself. It allows criminals to emerge hope from the despair of death and repent completely. It is more persuasive and rational than the abolition of the death penalty system advocated by capitalist countries. Culture determines the mechanism. Whether the mechanism is written or not depends mainly on the culture behind it. There are so many legal systems today, but many of them have become tools to punish the common people. Playing around, it's useless. Therefore, the Cultural Revolution is needed first. It is not difficult to conclude that the Cultural Revolution criticized the official values of Confucius and Lao Er, started ideological enlightenment, transformed the servility of the people, and strengthened the people's spirit of resistance. Official power, mass democracy replaces elite democracy, and establishes the value of serving the people that puts the people first. The overall goal and direction of the Cultural Revolution is not wrong, mobilizing the masses to expose the dark side from the bottom up and crack down on capitalist roaders and reactionary academic authorities. There is nothing wrong with the big purpose. Back then, despite the fact that the government secretly competed with the people, provoked the masses to fight against the masses, provoked the Red Guards to fight against the Red Guards, diverted the direction of contradictions, intentionally created chaos, and undermined the Cultural Revolution. However, the exposed problems cannot affect the essence of the Cultural Revolution's correct strategic goals. It is no exaggeration to say, Mao Zedong's political leadership is the highest state of the rule of law in mankind. He made the people consciously regulate themselves in the most lofty moral constraints of human beings. This is the ideal state of the rule of law in human society. Although there are not many laws, just like the US Constitution, there are not many articles and few changes, but they are effective everywhere and everyone abides by them. Since Mao Zedong stepped onto the stage of the CCP, political struggles and political differences within the party have never ceased. The political struggles are quite sharp, and some even reach the level of life and death. However, no matter how brutal the struggle was, Mao Zedong did not define them as criminals and put them on death row after his victory. Regarding Lin Biao's hasty departure with a mind full of secrets, Mao Zedong just said to Zhou En, "It's going to rain, mother is going home, let him go." In Mao Zedong's view, due to differences in understanding and the limitations of many subjective and objective factors, the mistakes made by political opponents, or perverse actions, are all the result of line struggles within the party and split political opinions, which cannot be compared with crimes. Otherwise, there will be. If you want to add a crime, why don't you have a word? The Gang of Four were undoubtedly political losers. However, if he is charged with one of the crimes of sabotaging the Cultural Revolution and conspiring to persecute Chairman Mao as a crime, it will only become a laughing stock of history. Mao Zedong advocated that as long as opponents who made mistakes in political struggle did not commit corruption crimes against the people like Liu Qingzhan and Jiang Zishan, Mao Zedong would never label opponents who made mistakes in political struggle as criminals. In the vortex of political struggle, there are only losers in political struggle, not criminals in political struggle. Otherwise, Both parties in the political struggle will completely break away from the rules of the political game and become either the winner or the butcher of criminals. Mao Zedong never used the most hypocritical means to label those who made mistakes in political struggle as criminals, so as to put them to death and never stand up for life. For criminals are no different from class enemies. Once a person who made a mistake in political struggle is labeled as a criminal, it is very difficult to restore his reputation through the procedure of redress. Mao Zedong is the celestial being of the sun, and the law is a hypocritical ruling tool. It was impossible for Mao Zedong to use hypocritical legal tools against his politically wronged opponents. The fact is that during the Cultural Revolution, Mao Zedong did not criminalize a single person. Mao Zedong never thought of using any means, including legal means, to deprive his political opponents of their bodies. Otherwise, how could Mao Zedong write, "You can't kill too many people. If you kill too much, you will lose social sympathy and labor. Anyone who has no blood debt or other major crimes that arouse public anger, but deserves to be killed, can be sentenced to death, but with a 1 or 2 year reprieve, and force them to work to see the effect. If they can be reformed during labor, the second step can be commuted to life imprisonment, and the third step can be commuted to fixed term imprisonment." Mao Zedong created the most advanced penal system in human history. Can we not accept it? After witnessing the disintegration of the Soviet Union, the restoration of capitalism, and the behavior of Hu and Zhao of the Chinese capitalist reform group, Chen Yun and others understood Chairman Mao better in his later years. After the 1990s, Zhao's people, such as Li Rui, Mao Yishi, Gao Shangquan, Wu Jinglian, etc., crazily promoted neoliberalism and misled reform. Chen Yun fought uncompromisingly with Hu, Zhao, and others during his lifetime. He not only opposed privatization, but also proposed to limit the scope of the market economy, and put forward the theory that the planned economy is a cage and the market economy is a bird. In his later years, Chen Yun also pointed out that Lenin's theory of imperialism is not outdated and should be highly valued. In fact, a large number of revolutionary veterans have repented in their later years. For example, a large number of revolutionary veterans of the Central Advisory Committee tried their best to resist the marketization, privatization, and liberalization reforms of Hu, Zhao, Wan and others. Unfortunately, these measures of Hu and Zhao were all after 1997. His subordinates who hid behind him partially implemented it to a certain extent. Under the misleading guidance of traitor scholars such as Wu Jinglian and Gao Shangquan, China's state-owned enterprises were privatized, education, medical care and housing were industrialized, accepting harsh terms of the WTO, and vigorously introducing foreign capital. China has launched neoliberal reforms that are more capitalist than the United States and Europe. Another example is Li Xiannian, who said to Chen Yun in his later years, during the Cultural Revolution, Chairman Mao made a big mistake when he said that there was a capitalist rotor in the party. However, judging from the past few years, do Hu and Zhao look like capitalist rotors? Chen Yun said, "What do they look like? They are capitalist rotors. What they do, their thoughts, their lives, and their political opinions prove that they are out-and-out capitalist rotors." Peng Zhen, who was overthrown as Liu Shaokai's best friend during the Cultural Revolution, missed Chairman Mao in his later years. He did not agree to insist on the 4 basic principles and adhere to reform and opening up. He proposed to use the 4 basic principles as the keynote. Higher than the 4 basic principles. As for Wang Zhen's last words before his death, Chairman Mao read at least 50 years more than him. You must know that during the lifetimes of Chen Yun, Li Xiannian, Peng Zhen, Wang Zhen, etc., the evil results of privatization, marketization, and colonization reform and opening up by the capitalist reformers have not yet fully manifested. If they are alive, as long as they do not betray their own ideals, they must be resolute supporters of Mao. Chen Yun said a word at a later time, which was about the 10th anniversary of the reform and opening up. China will lose its party and country if it leaves Mao Zedong thought and socialism and public ownership. China will be finished. Having the same understanding is really a hero who sees the same thing. Chen Yun talks about Mao Zedong. The prestige of Comrade Mao Zedong was established through long-term revolutionary struggle practice. Among the leading comrades of the Central Committee, no one can compare with Chairman Mao, including comrades Shaokai and Enlai. Even when Comrade Mao Zedong made so-called mistakes, many veteran cadres were punished so badly, but everyone still believed in him. We must hold high the great banner of Mao Zedong thought, and evaluate Chairman Mao realistically and appropriately. An old general's pain and confusion in his later years. This is the memory of his son Zhang Shen to his father Zhang Yiping. General Zhang Yiping said with great emotion in his later years, "What is socialism? First, the people have the right to speak. Second, common prosperity. We have failed to do both of these two things well." Zhang Shen read newspapers for his father and read about society. "The essence of socialism is to develop productive forces," Zhang Yiping said. "Which society does not develop productive forces? The essential feature of socialism that distinguishes it from other societies should be justice and fairness. Shouldn't this society that we have fought for all our lives be more just, fairer?" Zhang Shen said, "After the Cultural Revolution ended, my father called for reform wholeheartedly. However, reform and opening up brought economic prosperity on the one hand, and on the other hand brought disparity between the rich and the poor, prostitution, drug abuse, smuggling, and collusion between the police and robbers. The bullying of the underworld brought all the ugly social phenomena that were completely eliminated by them in the early days of liberation. This had to make my father, who had been a revolution all his life, fall into a painful, confused and intolerable situation in his later years. He often said to himself, is this the purpose of our revolution? If the result of the revolution is like this, I should not have participated in the revolution." Mr. Peng's last words before his death were, "Chairman Mao developed Marxism-Leninism." Liu Shaokai said to his children, "Chairman Mao has always seen farther than us, and this time he may be right. Shaokai once said to me, 'Deng Xiaoping, if my line really brings China to the road of capitalism, the masses will." The fight broke me, and I recognized it. The first thing General Luo Ruqing did when he was released from prison was to dress neatly, stand at attention in front of the portrait of Chairman Mao in Tiananmen Square, and then salute a standard military salute. His daughter said, "Why do you bow to Chairman Mao? He sent you to prison, and made our whole family suffer so much." Luo Ruqing turned her head around, slapped her hard, and said, "What do you know? You are not qualified to comment on leaders." When I got home, I set up a tablet for the chairman, and often went to the chairman's tablet to respectfully and silently mourn. Premier Zhou Enlai said, "What I ask everyone to always remember is, Mao Zedong thought is the only correct thought forever. It comes from the people, takes root in the people, and its soul is to serve the people. Therefore, we communists serve the people, and we all powers are granted by the people and must be supervised by the people. We will oppose anyone who competes with the people for profit, we will oppose anyone who opposes Chairman Mao, and we will overthrow anyone who colludes with imperialism and betrays national interests." Premier Zhou once said to Bo Yubo, "You can abstain from voting on what Chairman Mao is determined to do, but don't express opposition easily. In history, there have been several times when I thought the chairman's decision was wrong. However, after a period of time, it proved that his decision was correct. From now on, I will be more cautious and will not easily express my opposition. But then again, I was convinced that the chairman was wrong, and I firmly opposed it, but in the future practice again, the chairman was proven right." In the 1980s, whenever Ye Jianying heard Chairman Mao's name mentioned or talked about, he was so excited that he burst into tears. Admiral Yang Qinglu even claimed, "Knowing Mao Zedong is the greatest luck in my life." General Wang Zhen reprimanded some military cadres when the demonization was very fierce. He once said, "Now there are people in society who slander and deny Chairman Mao, and you don't speak up. Tell you, those who oppose Chairman Mao are sons of bitches and hybrid beast. Without Chairman Mao, there would be no me, Wang Zhen, and you generals." Before his death, old man Wang Zhen also felt that the world was wrong, and left 3 sentences to future generations. One sentence is, "I am sorry for Chairman Mao, whoever opposes Chairman Mao is a bitch." One sentence is, "Chairman Mao saw it at least 50 years earlier than us." One sentence reads, "If you lose Mao Zedong thought and public ownership, the time for Marxists to suffer will come." Jian Suisen's prediction, if China loses Mao Zedong thought and public ownership, China will be finished. Li Xiannian told others several times before his death, "I learned from Comrade Su Jianjian in military affairs, Comrade Chen Yun was my teacher in economics, Premier Zhou directly guided me in diplomacy, and Chairman Mao was my lifelong mentor." Yang Shankan wrote, "I was imprisoned from the beginning of the Cultural Revolution until 1975, and I never wavered in my belief in Chairman Mao. Now some people feel strange, saying that you people have suffered such severe persecution, and you have come out afterward. I still speak well of Chairman Mao." In 1986, Bo Yubo went to the south for research. During the trip, we visited the hometowns of Mao Zedong, Liu Shaokai, and Pen Diyue. In the dripping cave, the secretary asked Bo Yubo how he commented on Mao Zedong. He pondered for a moment and said, "Xiaoping is right. Without Chairman Mao, our party is still groping in the dark. No matter Shaokai or Mr. Pen, we are all students of Chairman Mao. Even higher." Bo Yubo once commented on Chairman Mao in this way, "At any time, we must consider him in the context of the great cause of the nation and the cause of the party. At any time, we must analyze it from the premise of the party's growth experience, system, and inner life in the party and separate individuals from political parties." Although he was also impacted, he still had faith. He once said to his children, "I adore Chairman Mao. Even if I am not free now, I still adore him. I finally understood that everything he did was for one purpose, that is, to oppose Chairman Mao specifically. He will deny everything that Chairman Mao affirmed during his lifetime. He will affirm everything that Chairman Mao denied during his lifetime." Bo Zikan, Bo Yubo's son, said, "Chairman Mao is the greatest leader and mentor in my father's heart." Comrade Shi Zongsun paid homage to Chairman Mao's former residence in his later years, and wrote an inscription, "Insist on Mao Zedong thought interpreted by Chairman Mao himself." This is a precious ideological weapon left by Comrade Shi Zongsun to future generations. This inscription shows that some people use the banner of Chairman Mao, but in fact, they do not really adhere to Chairman Mao's Mao Zedong thought. This is elusive and points to the revisionist line of certain comrades. The book The Past is Not Like Smoke, written by Zhang Bajun's daughter Zhang Yaihe, which almost entirely records the past events of rightists, reveals Zhang Bajun's evaluation of Chairman Mao. Zhang Bajun said to Zhang Yaihe, "Mao Gong is selfless." Mao Gong is selfless is not only a comment on Chairman Mao, but also answers why Mao Zedong did not have a personal enemy. This is, Mao Zedong is selfless. Among the people who were offended by Chairman Mao, the vast majority of people can look at him objectively. Zhang Bajun, appointed by Mao Zedong in 1957 as one of the largest rightists in the country, is one of them. Just because they are also selfless, only selfless people are willing to let go of personal grievances and treat him frankly and objectively, others cannot, and are not worthy. Mr. Liang Shuming was severely criticized by Mao Zedong in 1953, and he was hit again during the Cultural Revolution. In 1980, when American writer A.I. Kai, who wrote a biography of Liang, visited him, he asked, "There are many great men in Chinese history, who do you think is the greatest Chinese?" Liang Shuming neither said Confucius nor anyone else, but I think it was Mao Zedong, even though Mao Zedong made so-called mistakes in his later years. He said, "Chairman Mao is really amazing. I am afraid that there are few in history, a great figure in the world. He created the Communist Party. Without Mao Zedong, there would be no Communist Party. Without the Communist Party, there would be no new China. This is a 100% fact." This is how an old man who is very independent, familiar with Chinese history, has been severely criticized by Chairman Mao, and has many different ideological understandings from Chairman Mao thinks about Chairman Mao. In his later years, Liang Shuming's identification with communism and the leaders of the CCP, especially Chairman Mao, was manifested in some details. In 1957, his eldest grandson was born, and he named it Qin Yuan, implying the eldest grandson. In 1960, his second grandson was born, and he named it Qin Dong, implying reverence for Mao Zedong. In 1964, the third grandson was born. Liang Shuming named it Qining, implying respect for Lenin. These details can roughly reflect Liang Shuming's ideological changes after the mid-1950s. In June 2012, the Dalai Lama said in an exclusive interview, "Chairman Mao is like a father to me. He treats me like a son. Our relationship is very good." In the interview, the Dalai Lama recalled the warm time between him and Mao Zedong. The relationship between people's hearts. In 2009, during the Dalai Lama's visit to Japan, some media asked him, "Who is the leader who impressed you the most?" Dalai replied, "It is Chairman Mao. From 1954 to 1955, we cultivated a certain kind of close relationship. Chairman Mao treated me like a son. I often sigh from the bottom of my heart for his confident leadership. At the same time, I can still feel his wise ideal. He has not only won the victory of a country's revolution, but also wants to change the whole world." Ma Yingzhu, people who deny Mao Zedong even look down on their enemies. When Ma Yingzhu received mainland entrepreneurs visiting Taiwan, he said the following, Mao Zedong represented the conscience and the backbone of the nation. Since 1963, mainland China has possessed the actual ability to attack Taiwan, and it is absolutely possible to take Taiwan within a short period of time. But Mao Zedong did not do this. Maybe someone will understand the true meaning of it, that is, I don't want people on both sides of the strait to break the common backbone. The backbone of the nation is the heaviest and most critical point Mao Zedong undertakes. Whether it is fighting against the United States to resist US aggression and aid Korea, or fighting the former Soviet Union's self-defense counterattack against the Soviet Union, or the counterattack against India, all of them reflect the conscience and courage of a true national backbone. The old man is worthy of the name. It can be said that anyone with a little national conscience will be moved by Chairman Mao's boldness and courage, and will be greatly encouraged. As a person, the most basic conscience still needs to be talked about. Those who deny Chairman Mao look down on even the enemy. How Chairman Mao treated intellectuals, what kind of era was the first 30 years, and the evaluations of the heroes of the 2 bombs and 1 satellite after the comparison between the 2 eras are the most convincing. Zhou Guangzhou said, during the Cultural Revolution, talents were respected, and the atmosphere of science and technology was also very democratic. Jian Suisun said, without Mao Zedong thought, China will be finished. Jian Sankang said, I used to think it was a difficult moment, but it has become the golden age when Chinese people work the happiest, most energetic, and most comfortable. Jian Zongzhu, oppose Mao Zedong, and the disaster of the Chinese nation will take root. One day this nation will collectively pay the price for it. Jian Zongzhu, the author of Fortress Besieged, was the only famous writer who politely refused Chairman Mao's banquet. He stayed away from politics all his life and learned both Chinese and Western cultures. However, he made the following evaluation of the anti-Mao ideological trend more than 30 years ago: if you oppose Mao Zedong, the disaster of the Chinese nation will take root. One day, this nation will collectively pay the price for it. A bystander, it's scary to think about a wise man saying this. Hong Kong entrepreneur Lin Minmin, Mao Zedong thought is the way out for China. Lin Minji, a Hong Kong entrepreneur, is the chairman who manages more than 3,000 people. Lin Minmin, 74, is from Guangzhou, Fujian. In the mid-1970s, he went from his hometown in Fujian to the Philippines to attend his father's funeral, but unexpectedly stayed in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, from being a garment worker with 10 yuan a day, to building a factory with fellow villagers in Shenzhen to produce CK bottoms and other European and American famous brand clothing, and becoming a director who manages more than 3,000 people, Lin said, I am at this age. Printing a book at his own expense to promote Mao Zedong thought, not for money, and not for becoming an official, but because I have experienced the modern times of the Kuomintang, Mao Zedong, and reform and opening up, I think Mao Zedong thought is the way out for China today. He admits that most of the bosom friends who agree with his views in Hong Kong are from the mainland. Unlike those in the mainland, when people on the street see me wearing Chairman Mao's badge, they will come up and say to me, the Mao Zedong era was really good. I was a capitalist, and I was also confused by Deng Xiaoping's theory of getting rich first. Deng made some people get rich first, and the rich first drove the rich later. The result: polarization is created. No one will agree to equalization of wealth after they become rich. The rich will only get richer and the poor will get poorer. Look at the dock workers and Li Ka-shing. Montgomery, the greatest strategist throughout the ages, is Chairman Mao. The Chinese say he is the sun, and I quite agree with this metaphor. Kissinger, Chairman Mao is a god from the future world. Chairman Mao is the only philosopher king in the history of human society. I am also a groupie, and my idol is Mao Zedong. Russian President Vladimir Putin said in a speech on Pravda that Chairman Mao did not engage in personality cult but people worship, so he won the heartfelt admiration of the vast majority of Chinese and many honest and kind foreigners. Ye Jianning, without Chairman Mao, there would be no China today and no future. Ye Jianning talked about Chairman Mao's brilliant achievements many times with tears. He recalled his revolutionary history and said sadly, I have done little in my career. If I did not follow Chairman Mao, I would be mediocre, but I am still doing business in Nanyang. Teach at home. When I think of Chairman Mao's life, I feel sad. Now some people criticize Chairman Mao, saying that what he said is useless. We still have to rely on Chairman Mao. Without Chairman Mao, our Central Committee would hold meetings in the French concession and the British concession. Without Chairman Mao, the Long March would have been impossible, and it would not have been able to stand in northern Shaanxi. Later, it was impossible to fight against Japan and Chiang Kai-shek without Chairman Mao. Without Chairman Mao, there would be no China today and no future. The tears embroidered by the sisters in prison are dyed red by the blood of the martyrs. The party flag is red, the national flag is red, the army flag is red, and the regiment flag is also red. Red is the symbol of the Communist Party and the symbol of the proletariat. Whoever cuts down the red flag is a sinner of the people and a sinner of history. Deng Xiaoping, don't exaggerate my evaluation, and don't weigh too much. Some people put my standard above Chairman Mao, which is not good. After the Korean War ended, Chiang Kai-shek looked up to the sky and sighed, and said to his son Jiang Jingpo and Mao Renfen and other military generals, in this world, no one is a match for Mao Zedong. The Allies, the United States, say that I am not good enough, but what about them? They Western countries are also a bunch of stupid pigs. Compared with Mao Zedong of the Communist Party of China, they cannot be compared in any aspect. The most elite armies of 16 countries were beaten so badly by Mao Zedong. What a shame. Mao Zedong is also the pride of the Chinese people, and even a genius. I don't pay attention to how many capable people there are in the CCP. Only Mao Zedong pushed me to these small islands. The Allies are not Mao Zedong's opponents. Mao Zedong's war is art. Leadership in all aspects is art. Chiang Kai-shek suddenly raised his voice an octave. It's superb art. He went on to say, we want to study Mao Zedong. Learn from Mao Zedong. This is Chiang Kai-shek's final evaluation of Mao Zedong, who has struggled with Mao Zedong for decades. Taiwan deciphered Chiang Kai-shek's last words for the first time. Before he died, Chiang Kai-shek said, Mr. Mao is a great man. I have done bad things all my life. I am ashamed of my countrymen and Mr. Mao. When Chiang Kai-shek was about to die, his words were also kind. He finally said, without Mr. Mao, China would be torn apart. After I die, please place my coffin facing Beijing. I want to plead guilty to Mao Zedong. Chairman Mao had many rivals or enemies during his lifetime, but he did not have a single personal enemy. People's affectionate memory of Mao Zedong has gone through the baptism of time, which proves that no one can compare with him regardless of his thoughts, merits, personality, intelligence, knowledge, or writing theory or influence on the world, China, and future generations. It is said that it will shine thousands of miles before its death, and it will shine through the ages behind it. In her later years, Wang Guangmei said, the Cultural Revolution had its historical inevitability and complexity. When such a large-scale mass movement was launched, a group of people would inevitably jump out and make waves, and it was impossible for the chairman to control it. In fairness, although the chairman was very dissatisfied with Shaokai and wrote a big character poster, he still regarded it as a conflict among the people and regarded it as a mistake made by his own comrades, and did not file a case for investigation, let alone kill Shaokai. Looking at today's society, Chairman Mao was right back then. Seeing Wang Guangmei's talk, we really understand what it means to be upright, selfless, and fearless. There is really no personal grievance between Liu Shaokai and Chairman Mao. Liu just sees problems less far-reaching than Chairman Mao. The chairman is not afraid that the so-called rights of individuals will be replaced. He is really worried that the country of the working people will change color one day. Do not underestimate selfish distractions and petty production consciousness. Selfishness is the root of all evil. Sister Chen Wulai, the daughter of Comrade Chen Yun, an older generation of proletarian revolutionaries, denounced the rumor-mongers at the symposium on Mao Zedong thought, my father never said that Chairman Mao is incompetent in governing the country and guilty of the Cultural Revolution. This is someone who maliciously planted Li Rui's words on my father. My father loves and respects Chairman Mao very much, and has never said such a thing. All the rumor-mongers who have demonized Chairman Mao for more than 30 years will surely continue in front of the proletarian revolutionaries. The true colors are revealed. Thousands of years of history in the palm, millions of soldiers in the chest. Under the eyes of 6 continents, there is thunder in the pen. Sweep out the devil flames and willows, and arouse the dragon to fly. Slash the long whale with a sword. The world is full of spring, and the sunshine is red. Shu is generous, writes fierce battles, and sends long marches. Tianzhongwen brocade weaves out the pride of revolution. A close inspection of Li Bai in the poetry circle, and Su Xian's masterpieces of Si Wang, there is no such hero. Sing on the mountain with a scroll, flowing rhyme, and strong east wind. The vast Kunlun, the world, and the sky. Have you ever seen Jinggang flags flying, Yan'an pagoda towering, Kishui torrents rolling? Recalling the long march and singing the snow, the fog in the mountain city was broken, and the blood rushed to the air. Talk about one person's success or failure, and comment on the heat and cold of a century. Inheriting Marxism-Leninism, leading farmers and workers, driving out foreign robbers, defeating internal enemies. Congratulations on the establishment of China, the god of plague sent it away, the giant beetle dug out, and the nuclear explosion. Concentrate on and consolidate the foundation. Irrefutable proof of heaven and earth, Mao Zedong lived longer than the stars, the sun, and the moon, and his achievements surpassed the 3 emperors and 5 emperors.